Hey everyone, I wanted to quickly do an upload for today. I'm going to discuss an important hack that might help you in the long run. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm a love guru, a sexologist, etc. Everything I say, you can take it with a grain of salt, essentially take it or leave it. But I wanted to still post this video in case you can find yourself in a position where you'll be able to make better decisions in the long run. For starters, my biggest mistake is that typically anytime I find myself in a situation, especially a romantic interest, I tend to I tend to basically crawl back into my shell. And a lot of the time I tend to forget about myself and the friendship or even relationship. The point of this video is simply to state the 4 self hacks that I want to present. At first glance, you might not think much of it. You may think it doesn't even apply to you. But bear with me. I believe there is a chance these 4 hacks can actually help improve your situation, even if it's slightly. This is something that I just thought to myself recently, especially because I went through a very difficult situation with someone recently where I got my hopes up and they ended up crashing. My hopes, let's say, just crashed and burned right before my very own eyes. I just don't always know how to approach a new situation with any specific person. I come too strong and they retreat because of the energy I put out there. The bottom line is how you present yourself is how people will perceive you. And you don't have to always say a lot. A lot of the time, people can actually feel either comfortable or uncomfortable around you. You don't really have to speak out loud for them to have a general feeling about you. Once they get to know you, they'll start to develop an impression about you. But here's the caveat. A lot of the time we have this urgency that takes over our minds and we want to create a good impression, but to the point where it feels theatrical. You're basically doing everything in your power to convince this person that you are legitimately the right choice for them. Now, here's the problem. I know that a lot of times we might come across as car salesmen and we try to tell them why they should give us a chance and why they should consider including us in the picture. But here's the biggest problem. We get focused into the idea of making a long lasting impression. But at the same time, do you ever feel that you're just giving all of your time and energy into someone, but then somehow you forget that all of that went to them? You didn't even bother trying to gauge how you felt around these people. Sometimes we go the extra mile by creating excuses, and unfortunately, that can just happen depending on how you were raised as a person and how you eventually grew up as your own individual. Some of us really just turn a blind eye to other people's actions because we believe that eventually time will prove that they will side with us. So we just have to bear with it until the results magically happen. But the problem is, no timer is going to make a difference if the person isn't a right fit for you. And I think a lot of the time we try to fit ourselves into this idea of what we should do for people in order for them to like us in return. The problem is this method is just a fail method, and a lot of the time we end up disappointed by their reaction. They pull away and they completely retreat without a second thought. This can hurt a lot of people, especially individuals who have serious abandonment issues or people who just feel socially inadequate, but they put themselves out there to see if they can make a connection happen eventually. Now, I'm going to share 4 self hacks that definitely might improve your chances of obtaining a meaningful relationship, but the purpose isn't to just obtain a meaningful relationship. The purpose of this is to also take inventory of how you're feeling. Because a lot of the time we get so focused into the idea of being in relationships with people. But what we forget is not every relationship is worth us placing a bet. Sometimes we just might as well not even bet in the first place and let the deal slide past us because we don't always get a good deal. We don't always get people who have our best interests in mind. A lot of the times we tend to draw the short end of the straw and we end up fooling ourselves into thinking these people essentially are what we need in our circle of friends or a romantic interest that can turn into a relationship down the road. But the reason I want to share it is not because I'm an expert. It's not because my advice is totally bulletproof and you will just gain instant results. My advice might actually make everything easier for you. I said that this might help you achieve a meaningful relationship. While that is the intended result, the most important aspect of the self 4 hacks I'm about to share is what it can do for you. Because if you're going to be with someone, unless you are just different, you're just a different breed of person who just enjoys chaos and dysfunction, then this might not even apply to you. But if you're the type of person who wants all the bells and whistles of a relationship as long as you don't have to sacrifice your peace in the process, then this might be insightful for you. How can I put it this way? How can I put it this way? I'm going to give you the 4 hacks. You tell me if they work for you, if you get the chance. Now, here are the 4 hacks. I'm going to use myself as an example. For starters, a lot of the time when I'm doing reflection, it's hard to really put 2 and 2 together because most of the time I don't know how to take inventory of myself, and I know a lot of people don't do the same. We have an issue where we're all dysregulated most of the time, and as a result, we can never focus and reflect on what's really going on deep down inside of us. We may have the foresight, but we don't know what to do with it. Now, essentially, this is what I am going to teach you. So basically, the four self hacks, right? Number 1 is remain self. Now, essentially, remain self means that before you enter a friendship or a relationship, remain self means the following. It means that you're not going to go above and beyond to edit yourself into becoming a version of a specific person that will attract or befriend the person you have in mind. I'm going to tell you why that's a bad idea. Because when you try to edit yourself as a whole, This just creates a lot of stress. And eventually, think of yourself as someone who's just juggling. You're just a juggler. You're juggling this, what is it? This persona that isn't really you. Eventually, the act is going to get old and you're going to eventually burn out and lose interest with this person, or they might lose interest with you. It's important for this first step that you remain yourself. Even if it's unpopular to them, listen, you can only do so much as a person. Even when you're at the top of your game, there are people who will most likely leave you. And you can't control whether or not someone stays with you. If that's essentially what you want, just to focus on the idea of being with someone by controlling them, pulling their strings behind their back, that's not going to make you happy in the long run. So always, essentially, what you want to do is always you want to keep the remain self component intact because it's important before you enter a friendship or a relationship. Don't fall into this peer pressure that you have to change who you are completely for someone else's validation. Because regardless, chances are, even if you become this completely different, let's say you try to answer this alter ego of yours, that alter ego may not win their approval in the long run. And you're just wasting your time trying to create an impression that was wasted in the long run because you never achieved the results you thought originally. Now, number two would be if you are in a friendship or relationship, these two components are important. Number two is devote self. Devote self means that you're going to use this component to devote your time into the people or things that have value in your life. If they give you value in a sense where you feel fulfilled going above and beyond for them, this is what devote self means. This is the component where you put all your energy into them because you're doing it from a place of concern, a place of support, a place of purpose. So when you focus and tap into the devote self, you're devoting yourself to others, devoting to people who mean something to you. So always do this, but we're going to go to the third component, which is important. And the third component is essentially liberate self. Now, this one's really important. Liberate self essentially means you're taking yourself away from the equation. You made certain people happy, but what you want is to liberate. You want to add that liberate self component into it. Because if you don't, essentially what you're going to do is you're going to run yourself empty trying to people please and make everyone happy around you. However, that is a good feeling in general, but if you do too much too soon, and it's a pattern where it's constantly taking place, people are going to take advantage of you. And most of all, you're not going to feel happy about the fact that you're giving yourself unconditionally to people because you're going to look at it and you're going to say, wow, they're not giving me the same attention or the same effort in return. So liberating yourself helps, and the liberate self component's important simply because you don't want to give all of this energy away that eventually will go to waste, because eventually you might even chase the people around you away. They might think you're a complete pushover, you're just focusing on us. They're going to notice that you're putting all your eggs in one basket and it's strictly going to them, not yourself. So The liberate self component is the most trickiest one because a lot of the time there are people, and I'll raise my hand, I'm one of them. I always want to go above and beyond for others, but what happens is when I do it, I end up screwing myself in the process because what I don't realize is while it does feel good to go the extra mile for someone, people are not always going to reciprocate that energy in return because either they're not the right person for you or they feel like you have some sort of dependency on them, which is going to make them stray away from you. So that's why you want to liberate yourself. That's the port. That's the component. Liberate self. It means you liberate yourself from the obligation. At some point, there's a cutoff point where you go, okay, I did everything today to make you happy. Now I need a breather. Now I need to focus on myself because I've given you all my time and energy. You do this as a place of not going against them, or it's not coming from that place. It's coming from a place of self-preservation. And if you don't apply that at some point in time, these people will not, they will not care about you. And eventually it will leave a bad taste in your mouth because you're always thinking, I'm constantly slaving myself away to make others happy, but they're not doing the same. The reality is they're not supposed to do it all the time either. And if you already have that expectation in your mind, you are already doing way too much. It's not about, how do I phrase it? It's not about making others feel content, right? You want to make people around you feel as if they have value in your life. But at the same time, if that's all you do, eventually people will take you for granted and they'll kick you to the curb. You just won't be a factor in their life. It's also important to realize before I go to the last hack that one of the biggest issues is that once a situation ends, like once we go from the beginning of the tunnel all the way to the end, we lose ourselves in between. We lose ourselves, and once we come out of the end of that tunnel, we feel lost without that person. That is the most crippling feeling for me because anytime I end something, I don't return back to myself. I go back and relive the experience over and over. But on top of it, I become so analytical. I don't take a break. I don't think to myself, hey, I did my best. It just didn't work out in my favor. I just nitpick every little experience and I try to basically recite what I did right, what I did wrong, but it becomes an endless loop. And eventually, what you have to realize is while you make mistakes, and it's important to acknowledge them, there are times where you're just dealing with uh, a person who's just made out of stone, or, just a brick wall, a person who won't budge an inch for you. You should not always assume guilt or blame or responsibility when the other person didn't try to fill your cup or meet you halfway. It's not coming from a place of expectation. It's just coming from a place of reality. There are people who will not pour an, an ounce into you, even when you do your best. So this is why this last hack is very important. So essentially, you're going to go to the final hack, which is return self. And return self just means that essentially return self and remain self. The first hack and the fourth hack, they kind of go hand in hand. Remain self is that you enter a new experience with someone as yourself. And return self means that after that experience is gone, you go back to who you were before you met them. It means that while you may experience a few bumps in the road, you're not going to let that situation destroy you. because that's what happens with a lot of people. They have a bad relationship, and you did everything you could to salvage what you used to have with that person. But unfortunately, what happens is we destroy ourselves in the process because we weren't able to sustain what you used to share with that person. And here's the deal. Once you've reached that breaking point, there's just no coming back from it. So you always want to implement these 4 hacks for a specific reason. These 4 hacks will help you establish how you enter a relationship, how you function within a relationship, and how you move on after the relationship. So essentially, if we take the first hack, which is remain self, right? Remain self means you are who you are before the relationship, and you don't try to become a different person once you're in that relationship. Don't try to woo someone or try to have someone weasel their way into your heart by putting on a character that eventually will run out of its acting chops, and you'll just go back to square one. Don't go that far trying to be someone that isn't you. Now, you may want to improve some of your approach. You may want to improve your approach, beliefs, standards, etc. But that doesn't mean to become a different person altogether. That's an important clue. So the remain self, that's the first hack, and that's how you enter a relationship. And you're gonna be the same person you were before the relationship. You're gonna be that person once you're in a relationship. Change is good as long as it's authentic. Now, if it's fabricated, where you're just forcing yourself to be a different person in order to score some brownie points with that individual, then you're wasting your time, quite frankly. You might as well just, if it's that bad, at that point, you might as well seek a therapist, because that goes to show that if you're trying to be a completely different person to score some validation or score some brownie points, then you need all the help you can get at that point. Number 2 is, again, devote self. This is once you're in that relationship, right? Devote self and liberate self. They go hand in hand. Just as number 1 and number 4 go hand in hand, number 2 and number 3 go hand in hand. So devote self and liberate self, which is number 3. Both of these, they take place during the relationship. So devote self is you giving yourself to that person. This is the key component where you're giving yourself to someone and you're okay with how much you've given them. But once you start to feel that you're giving too much of yourself, that's when you have to go into liberate self. Liberate self is important because that's when you create that important boundary where you're done for the day and you are tired of giving yourself unconditionally to someone, especially if this person treats you as chopped liver, as if you're just a pesky mosquito that they're just trying to slap away from their face. If that's how you come across, if you're that devoted, then you need to liberate the self. You need to liberate yourself from that responsibility of just working overtime to make these people happy. Because even if you do work overtime to make them happy, it doesn't mean they're going to stay with you. So I just want you to bear that in mind. And finally, number 4 is return self. So return self goes hand in hand with number 1, which is remain self. Both of these go hand in hand. Number 1 and number 4, number 2 and number 3. But they all have important functions. So number 1 is you are who you are before you enter that relationship. Number 2 and number 3 is essentially giving and retreating, giving and retreating, giving and retreating, because you don't constantly want to retreat, but you don't want to give so much of yourself where you're just left high and dry. And number three, sorry, and the third part, right, is number four, which is return self. So basically, what happens is you're mindful that the friendship or relationship can end at any point. But once that happens, you're not going to dwell on it to the point where you have a bleeding heart over the whole situation. You're just going to accept that the situation ended. I'm not going to say it won't hurt or upset you because that would be a flat out lie, especially if you cared about the person. But at the same time, returning to the self means that you're ready to move past this person. That person is just in your rearview mirror. You're not going to look at them the same. You're just going to move on from them. That's basically the gist of it. So these four hacks are important because they can help you want to put yourself out there, but at the same time, prevent you from being afraid of coming back to yourself if it doesn't work out in your favor. It's important to have this idea in mind because if you just always approach a situation from a point where you're just desperate to gain any relationship that's coming your way, then eventually it's just not going to work in your favor. You're going to end up regretting the idea of entertaining certain people who didn't have your best interests at heart. So with that being said, I think you got the gist of it, right? But I'll repeat it once more. The four self hacks, essentially, right? Remain self, devote self, uh, liberate self, and it was remain self. All of these, sorry, return self. See, I'm already struggling here. So the four hacks are remain self, devote self, liberate self, and return self. All of these hacks are important and they go hand in hand. Number one and number four, remain self, return self. Number two and number three, devote self, liberate self. Number one and number four is number one, you're entering a new opportunity with someone. And then number four is you're accepting that that opportunity's over. The difference is you're coming into this new opportunity without having to lose yourself in the process. And then number four is you're not going to allow that situation to destroy or define you. Number two and number three, devote means that you're going to put your energy into this person up to a certain point. And once you feel that you've reached a threshold where it's making you uncomfortable giving too much to someone, and you feel that you're running on E, that's when you go to liberate self, where you go, okay, I'm glad I gave this person my energy, but I need to reel it back because it's not going to do me any favors because number one, you might come across as a simp where you're just always being thoughtful and generous. But what about yourself? You know, you got to realize that you also run on energy and you don't have a limitless supply. So you have to think about it very deeply because if you start giving and giving and giving, at some point it can turn into an obsessive pattern where it's almost as if you're living for them, but you're no longer living for yourself. So that's why the liberate self component sort of frees you from that responsibility to constantly give, give, give. But that's essentially what I wanted to share. These four hacks might help you achieve the results you need if you find yourself in a very unsuccessful situation with people in general. Hopefully, you guys can take away an important lesson here that it's important to build relationships, but we also need to realize that it's important to let go of what no longer fuels us or no longer serves us. Now, if you're at fault, that's different and you need to work on yourself. If it's just simply you trying to blame someone else for your own shortcomings, then this advice won't work for you. This advice is mainly for the people who are people pleasers and they just don't know how to stop giving someone without just sacrificing their entire kindness and goodness just for the other person to reject them later on. If you're that type of person where you just give, 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 and you end up finding yourself in the same boat all by yourself, wondering where you went wrong, this is the advice for you. Because I found myself in the same position where I'm thinking that I need to give myself unconditionally until I realize if I do it, then they're just going to see me as something conditional, something that they don't want around them. And eventually it will come true because they will make up their minds about me and they might just leave me high and dry. I gave myself unconditionally and they conditionally made it their choice to walk away. And that can happen. So be mindful of how much you're willing to give because it's a sacrifice and it's most of all a balancing act that you have to take into consideration. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful day and hopefully all this advice that I just gave you through the four steps or the four self hacks can help you make better choices. Again, this advice isn't 100% bulletproof. I'm in fact going to be working on this advice that I gave you because I'm a work in progress as well. And I'm actually going to see what this does for me because I need to test drive it. But I thought of sharing this with you guys because I wanted to inspire you. There are people who give their loves unconditionally and they end up getting burned in the process. But what most of these people want most of the time, including myself, is for someone to realize that, hey, we're putting this effort because we care. But at the same time, we have to care by pulling back. We can't care by constantly giving something to someone because eventually, no matter how hard we try, we're just going to essentially manifest the opposite of what we want from that person. We're going to push them away, even though theoretically they should want to lean in closer to us. But if that does happen, you have to realize that if it continues and it doesn't get any better, you need to go from remaining yourself to going back to um, returning to yourself. Because if you stay in that bubble where you're not creating a boundary in place, then you're going to feel stuck. And that's why we talk about these four self hacks. You want to remain yourself because there's always that chance that this person may not work out in your favor. And then you want to return to yourself because even if the experience goes south, you don't want that person to destroy you from within to the point where it takes a long time for you to recover from it. Because if it does happen, what happens is we inherit that bitterness that we gain from that individual experience. So even though we may feel entitled to this anger, it's going to affect us in the long run. And we want to return to ourselves for that very reason, because we need to understand, hey, I gave it my all, but I'm also ready to let go of this friendship or relationship because it's no longer serving me in any capacity. It's serving them. And I mean, that's great. But if it's just only them and you feel that you're just, you're literally unable to pour any more of, your cup to theirs because your cup is empty, then that's when you know pretty much it's a done deal and there's just nothing left to explore with that individual. So that's why I'm giving you these four self hacks. Hopefully you can make use of them. I'm going to do my best to make use of them because this is just something I came up with recently. It's a mental hack where if you find yourself being in a new situation, you want to remain yourself. You don't want to be this new person just to impress them. And once you're with that person, you want to know how to devote yourself to them, but you also want to liberate yourself from them. And finally, returning to yourself means that you accept that the situation's over and you're ready to come back to yourself without feeling ashamed to move on because you're just holding on to hope that this person will change to your liking. If this is a very fantasy driven ideology and it can hold us back because it makes us hope of something that it isn't there. It's it was never there in the first place. So that's why I'm giving you these four hacks, and as I said, these four hacks might help you establish insight into what you want from a person, but it will also help you establish how to handle yourself when you're with that person and how to move on from that person once everything has been said and done. So again, we got the four hacks, which is remain self, devote self, liberate self, and finally return self. Hopefully this can help you guys, as I'm going to do it myself and I'm going to see if I experience different results moving forward, because I definitely need all the help I can get as well. I'm in the same boat as you. Hopefully we can learn from this experience, and I might even make a video down the road sharing what I've observed from implementing these four self hacks. But in the meantime, you might as well see if it works in your favor, especially if you're a person who's just a caretaker. You go above and beyond, head and shoulders above the rest just to make others happy. Try to see if this can help you. Try to see if you notice a difference. And then if you want to comment below and share your experience, see if any of this advice I gave you somehow resonates with you and it somehow helped you in some shape or form with your relationships, then make sure to please comment that information below. Otherwise, I'm going to let you guys go. You guys have a fantastic day. Peace out. I'll see you later.